Carolyn Martins has long been killing Eve's juiciest mystery. The former head of MI6's Russia desk is deliberately mysterious, usually running at least one shadow operation that threatens to upend the official assignment. Her focus is on her career and she's been divorced 3 times. Whenever a new and interesting character pops up, they turn out to share some storied history with Carolyn, frequently romantic, and yet little is known of her own personal history beyond her lightning-fast rise up the ranks of the world's most fabled intelligence service.
Well, Beethoven named his greatest symphony number 3.
So?
So? How many of us are there? God, you're sexy when I'm right.
Last week, some nuance dribbled out when she confirmed to Villanelle that her gay father was, in fact, an OG Cold War special agent. This week, in a series of titillating, black and white flashbacks, we learn more, including how Carolyn's origin story intersects with the birth of the 12.
Do you know how many service rules you've just broken?
I learned from the best.
You just promised me. You won't get killed by some Soviet tow rag on your first posting.
Oh.
I'll never live it down at the club.
Which club is that? The one you go to with your Foreign Office friends? Or the one you go to after? Good night, Daddy.
The year is 1979 and Carolyn's undercover in Berlin, embedded with a group of young lefties who fancy themselves anarchists but are struggling to name their ragtag opposition. Carolyn is even more misanthropic and derisive as a young person, bit fun, too. She smiles a lot. She likes this work and knows she's good at it. Going by Janice, Carolyn suggests the 12, an homage to Beethoven's Symphony No. 3 that honors the group's 12 founders. A group, we'll learn, that includes at least 2 foreign intelligence officers and the elusive Lars Meyer. Lars was called Johann then, and he was the 12's leader in addition to Janice's boyfriend. Not that Carolyn took the distinction seriously. She starts an affair with Comrade Carl, which she conducts at the same MI6 house where her father conducts his own secret affairs. The UK decriminalised homosexuality in the late 60s, but that doesn't mean it was welcome at Vauxhall. Present-day Carolyn is also in Berlin, tracking down Lars Johann and plaintively walking the streets of a past life. Sitting on a bench, she gazes into the old place where her dad used to live, thinking back to the last time she was there. The 12 was celebrating, and Carolyn suggested borrowing from her dad's well-stocked liquor cabinet to keep the party going. But when she goes to raid his stash, Carolyn finds her father in the garage, dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Scattered nearby are photos of him kissing a male lover. Blackmail.
There's just too much breakfast, Benita. Don't you have a home to go to? Her husband is an asshole.
Do you want to know something funny?
Please.
He's a firefighter. He's supposed to be stuffing bands.
I can help you. If that's what you want.
Take Eve as an example. She had a whole life she threw away in pursuit of, what exactly? There's her infatuation with Villanelle. But Elaine says something impossibly cutting this episode that feels close to the mark no matter Eve's denial. She calls Eve a bird watcher desperate to fly. Eve may hate the game, as she insisted to Carolyn earlier this season, but she's always adored its beautifully unscrupulous players. This week, she comes close as ever to mimicking their tactics when she kidnaps Helene's daughter as payback for Villanelle's prison release. She even traffics her across international waters back to England.
You threw me in the water, and now I have an ear infection. Pull that stunt again and I chop you into small tiny pieces and eat you.
So what's next in my training program?
You look amazing.
You totally do, don't you?
What is that?
That is everything I could find on Oliver Schubert. Oh, and that's like a dummy's guide to the Cold War.
Great. I've been meaning to catch up. So he's no longer a photographer. He's a classics professor.
And you are a student with an interest in radical 1970s politics, and you have a meeting with him in 2 hours. I'm just going to piss.
Oh, no, wait, please. Wait. 47, 48, 49.
Oh, you found me.
In Havana, Villanelle is giving a masterclass on anticipating the next step. Still grappling with what it means to be a good person with a flair for murder, she volunteers her services for charity. The kindly housekeeper at the Russian safe house is being abused by her firefighter husband. It's art, really, what Villanelle can manage with a little time and a smoke machine. She stages a fire, then drowns the wife-beating husband with his fire hose when he comes to put it out. It's not just the twisted killing methodologies that set Villanelle apart, it's how she gets away with it. After waterboarding the fire chief to death, Villanelle doesn't make a shadowy escape down a back alley. She walks out the front door looking like the victim.
Who wants to trash the place?
Villanelle agrees to a few more pro bono hits on behalf of Havana's mistreated wives, kind of like Robin Hood but for murder. She's rehoning her craft before heading back to Europe to track down Helene.
These are some of my friends. They all have their own Camilos. Would you help them?
Okay.
Back in the present, Carolyn finds an old associate called Carolina, who was Carl's girlfriend at the time Janice slept with him. Now a suburban mum, Carolina assures Carolyn she had no idea Johan was still alive. It's a depressing reunion, at least for the former spy with dwindling allies and no leads. When they were young, Carolina confesses she was intimidated by Carolyn, envious of her intellect, her swagger. But from where Carolina's sitting now, Carolyn's life doesn't seem so glamorous after all.
Janice was just a front. As was almost everything else you thought you knew about me. Aber es ist Wasser und die Brücke. Fancy a sausage?
Thank God I didn't know your real name. Carolyn, Carolina. I would have been desperate to ditch the extra A.
A sultan and a sultana are two very different things. Johan is alive.
But he drowned. The police found his body in the lake.
Someone messed up. You haven't seen it?
Not since that night at your father's house.
Still in Margate coaching Pam on how to become more like Villanelle, which is to say as distractingly intoxicating as she is ruthless. He tries a fairy godmother makeover, but the haute couture wears Pam. Instead, Pam adopts a sweet, vaguely rockabilly aesthetic with the help of that cute carny from last week.
She-Hulk! In a good way. Not green. And with a nice face. I'm kind of access all areas, me. I'm responsible with keys, so... Yeah.
Will you help me?
Wow. You look fierce.
I am fierce. Thanks. I'm Pam.
Hi, Pam.
Chloe tails along as Eve meets the man who took Lars's photograph back in the 70s. He tells her what he remembers of the guy, an Icelandic revolutionary called Johan who drowned before he could do anything revolutionary, had an English rose of a girlfriend called Janice. The photographer even lends Eve the Super 8 footage that allows her to ID Carolyn. It's all coming together now, it seems. Or it's all falling apart. Eve's falling apart or falling away. Her investigation into the 12 is progressing, sure, but so is her collapse into evil. Child abduction. Eve, come on. When Elaine comes to collect Chloe, Chloe begs to stay with the warm woman who lured her with presents and screen time instead of going home to Paris with her icy mama. Bravo, Eve, Elaine spits. Eve is proud of the caper, but dastardly deeds at the hard part of what women like Elaine and Villanelle do for a living. Surviving what comes next, keeping one eye open as you accumulate more and more enemies, is the more relentless burden.
She was British, I think. Fun, in a spiky sort of way.
Do you know her last name?
Can't remember, I'm afraid. But I remember a party. We were all there. All the Kreuzberg squad gang. I've got an old Super 8 reel in my office somewhere. Though you'd have to find a projector.
Don't worry, I didn't get anything out of her. She knows nothing about you.
Of course, Carolina's lying. And of course, Carolyn knows she's lying. Carolina's always been a JV operator, and her tells haven't evolved in the last 40 years. That night, Carolyn breaks into her house and finds a suspicious note about Carolina's father's old cabin. This, too, compels a flashback to the last time Carolyn spied on Carolina. Using a sort of Cold War spidey sense, she divined the hiding spot of Carl's real passport, his Russian one with his real Russian name, without tearing the place apart. Carolyn wasn't the only spy among the 12, and she evidently wasn't its sharpest. That honor belongs to Konstantin, a young KGB agent who infiltrated the 12 alongside Janice. Konstantin slept with Carolyn to get close to her father, then blackmailed him to death. Maybe that's when Carolyn stopped smiling so much. She confronted Konstantin about it back in 1979, but Johann stumbled upon their lakeside meeting and jealously mistook it for a lover's quarrel.
In zukunftshohen Wäldern und uns erzählen vom Räuber und vom Prinzen.
Even supposing Carolyn wasn't the sharpest. She confronted Konstantin about it back in 1979, but Johann stumbled upon their lakeside meeting and jealously mistook it for a lover's quarrel. Together, the young agents made the wordless decision to kill Johann, taking turns beating him over the head with an oar until he stopped resurfacing for air. They're the reason Johann was believed dead, and they're the reason Lars is still alive now. Carolyn finds Carolina's father's cabin through Konstantin. When she gets there, she finds Johann, who allows her inside. But Johann's location isn't the most revelatory thing to come of her short phone call to Konstantin, with whom she's always shared a peculiar relationship, even sparing his life last season. Over the phone, they exchange wistful nothings. Could they have lived some other life if they hadn't, in the early throes of romance, not quite bludgeoned a man to death in a local water feature? Alas, some people just aren't built for happiness.
What'd you think?
I think you like it.
I think it's been done.
As Elaine continues to hunt, she appears unaware that she's being hunted as well. She returns to London, this time without Chloe, to nag Eve to death. She patronizingly congratulates her for becoming a pathetic, inferior facsimile of the gorgeous exotic death dealers who fascinate her. But rather than take revenge on Eve, she seems almost to pity her. She's found Lars and invites Eve along to the confrontation.
Things have gone really downhill for you.
They were always bad for me. You just never really saw.
Well, things were bad for me too. Oh. You want to hug it out?
Why are you here, Villanelle?
You were going to tell me where Helen is?
Is that it? No small talk? I trained this one up as well. Before you. She's crazy. but she might be able to help you. Plus, I think you like her.
From last week, Villanelle declares the look is tired, but all these trends are cyclical. Really, what hasn't been done before? Constantine tells Villanelle he doesn't know how to find her lane, and we believe him because he'd surely like her dead too. As fatalistic as he is about anyone's chances of escaping the clutches of the 12, he gives his old charge what he can, the name and location of another of Helene's assassins. They hug before Villanelle goes, a long, emphatic hug. Halfway through Killing Eve's finale season, I wonder if we've just seen our first big goodbye. If this is their last run-in, I guess I'm a little surprised Villanelle doesn't kill Constantine, but lots of people with motive and opportunity have chosen not to kill him across the years, Carolyn and Eve included. Maybe it's his irrepressible joviality.
What are we waiting for? Where's Lars?
You'll see. Just keep watching, Nato.
When Helene's black car pulls up to a tiny dead end in Margate and not a forested cabin just outside Berlin, it's clear she's lying. But shouldn't it have been clear before then? Helene isn't built for happiness or cooperation, and she's definitely not prepared to overlook the matter of her only daughter's international abduction. We never see the shooter, only the target. Villanelle is peering into a shop window, staring at her own reflection, which means she watches the arrow fall from the sky and pierce her shoulder, not a death blow, and considering the choice of weapon, it's not meant to be. Villanelle might be the bullseye, but Eve, locked into the back seat and screaming to be let out, is who Helene's there to punish. As much as Eve is fascinated by the women she pursues for a living, she lacks what made Villanelle so invulnerable for so long, what made Carolyn so good at this game from all the way back in 1979, when she quickly closed the door on the image of her own dead father. Eve's heart doesn't have an off switch,